I thought I knew my husband of 15 years until I discovered he had been stealing from our family's future every single day. One accidental phone call revealed a secret so devastating that it didn't just end his lies. It ended everything. My name is Tamika Williams, and I'm 38 years old. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, where the desert sun beats down on perfectly manicured lawns and white picket fences line streets filled with the American dream. For 15 years, I believed I was living that dream. I work as an elementary school teacher at Desert Bloom Elementary, where I teach 3rd grade and watch 8-year-olds discover the magic of reading chapter books for the first time. There's something pure about their excitement when they finally understand a difficult concept, and I've always found comfort in the predictability of my classroom routine. My husband Bradley is 41, and when we first met at Arizona State University 20 years ago, he had this confidence about him that made me feel safe. He was studying business while I was working toward my education degree, and he always seemed to have everything figured out financially. Even as broke college students, Bradley somehow managed our tiny budget so we could occasionally afford dinner at something nicer than the campus cafeteria. He told me he had a natural gift for numbers and planning for the future, and I believed him completely. After graduation, Bradley landed a job as an insurance claims adjuster, and it seemed perfect for him. He spent his days investigating accidents, calculating damages, and determining payouts for people going through some of the worst moments of their lives. He was good at it too, earning promotions and handling increasingly complex cases. The job required attention to detail, financial analysis, and the ability to spot when people weren't telling the truth. These skills made him invaluable at work, and I trusted that those same abilities would protect our family's financial future. We have 2 children who are the absolute center of my world. Our daughter Nora is 12 years old, and everything a mother could hope for in a child. She makes honor roll every semester, plays violin in the school orchestra, and has this beautiful way of seeing the world that reminds me why I became a teacher in the first place. Nora has always been responsible beyond her years, often helping me grade papers or organize classroom supplies during summer breaks. She dreams of becoming a veterinarian and talks constantly about saving enough money for college and veterinary school. Her dedication to her future goals has always inspired me to work harder to provide for her dreams. Our son Felix is 9 years old and brings pure joy into every room he enters. He plays soccer year-round and has this infectious laugh that can turn around even my worst days. Felix is one of those kids who makes friends instantly and sees the best in everyone he meets. He's not quite as academically focused as his sister, but he has an emotional intelligence that amazes me. Felix often notices when I'm stressed before I even realize it myself, wrapping his little arms around me and asking if I need help with anything. Both of my children have no idea that their parents have been struggling financially, and I've worked hard to keep it that way. My sister Celeste is 35 and works as a nurse at Phoenix General Hospital. She's been my closest confidant since we were children, and there's nothing I can't tell her. Celeste has always been the more suspicious one between us, questioning people's motives and looking for red flags that I tend to miss. She's single by choice, focusing on her career and traveling whenever she gets time off. Celeste makes good money as a nurse and has always been generous with our family, but she's also been increasingly concerned about our financial situation over the past few years. Our home is a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style house in a neighborhood where most families seem to be doing better than we are. The houses around us get new roofs, updated landscaping, and fresh paint regularly, while ours has needed repairs that we somehow never seem able to afford. I drive a 7-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door that happened 3 years ago, and Bradley drives a pickup truck that's even older but necessary for his work. We've never been able to afford family vacations like our neighbors take, and I've always attributed this to the cost of living in Arizona and the expenses that come with raising two active children. Bradley handles all of our major financial decisions and has since we got married. He pays the bills, manages our savings accounts, and makes decisions about investments or major purchases. I have access to our primary checking account for daily expenses, and my teaching salary gets deposited there, but Bradley has always managed what he calls the big picture finances. He explains this arrangement by saying that his work experience with insurance claims has taught him how to protect our assets and plan for unexpected expenses. I trusted this explanation completely because it made sense, and because Bradley had never given me any reason to doubt his judgment. In our daily life, I handle everything related to the children's schedules, school activities, and household management, while Bradley focuses on work and finances. We have a comfortable routine where I do most of the cooking and cleaning, and Bradley takes care of yard work and home maintenance. Our marriage has always felt like a partnership where we each handle what we're best at, and I genuinely believed we were building a secure future together. What I didn't realize was that Bradley's expertise in spotting financial deception in his professional life had taught him exactly how to hide his own lies from someone who trusted him completely. His knowledge of insurance fraud, false claims, and financial manipulation hadn't made him better at protecting our family's money. It had made him a master at stealing it without leaving obvious traces. The signs were there, but I explained them away because I loved him and because the alternative was unthinkable. When we couldn't afford things that other families our age seemed to manage easily, I assumed it was because we were being more responsible and saving for the future. When Bradley insisted we needed to be financially cautious, I thought he was being wise and protective. When he got defensive about money conversations, I told myself he was just stressed about providing for us. I had no idea that while I was teaching children about honesty, responsibility, and building character, my own husband was systematically destroying everything we had worked to build together. I didn't know that the man I trusted with our family's future was using my love and trust as weapons against our children's security and my own financial independence. The story I'm about to tell you changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my judgment, and my ability to protect my children. It's a story about how financial secrets can destroy a family, how the person closest to you can be your biggest threat, and how sometimes the worst betrayal can lead to the most important discoveries about your own strength. This is the story of how one phone call ended 15 years of lies and started the most difficult but most empowering chapter of my life. Looking back now, I can see that our life in suburban Phoenix was built on a foundation of lies. But at the time, it felt like we were living the American dream, just with a tighter budget than I would have preferred. Our neighborhood, Sunset Ridge Estates, was filled with families just like ours, working parents, school-aged children, and modest homes with small front yards that required constant watering to stay green in the desert heat. Every morning, I would wake up at 5:30 to prepare for my day at Desert Bloom Elementary. I loved my job teaching third grade, even though the pay wasn't spectacular. Arizona teachers don't make much money, but I had chosen this career because I genuinely believed in the importance of education and the joy of watching children discover their potential. My classroom was my sanctuary, filled with colorful posters about reading strategies and math concepts, student artwork covering every available wall space, and the organized chaos that comes with 22 8-year-olds learning together. Bradley's schedule was less predictable than mine. As an insurance claims adjuster, he often had to visit accident scenes, interview witnesses, and inspect damaged property. Some days he would leave early in the morning and not return until after dinner, explaining that he had been documenting a complex claim or meeting with attorneys about a disputed case. His work seemed demanding but important, and I respected how seriously he took his responsibilities to his clients and his company. Our financial arrangement had developed naturally over the years. When we first got married, I was making very little as a new teacher, and Bradley's salary was significantly higher. It made sense for him to take charge of our major financial decisions while I focused on day-to-day household expenses and anything related to the children. I had access to our primary checking account, where my paycheck was deposited, and from which I paid for groceries, gas, school supplies, and other regular expenses. Bradley handled the mortgage, insurance payments, utilities, and what he called our investment and savings strategy. This division of financial responsibility seemed logical and efficient. Bradley would review our budget every few months, letting me know if we needed to cut back on certain expenses or if we had a little extra money for something special. He set up automatic payments for most of our major bills, so I rarely saw the actual amounts we were paying for things like our mortgage or car insurance. When I asked about our savings or retirement accounts, Bradley would give me general updates like we're on track or building a solid foundation for the kids' college funds. I trusted these explanations completely because Bradley had never given me any reason to doubt his financial judgment. In college, he had helped me manage my student loans and had taught me about credit scores and building good financial habits. Early in our marriage, his careful budgeting had allowed us to buy our house and start our family without the financial stress that many young couples experience. I genuinely believed that his expertise was protecting our family's future. Our daily routine felt stable and secure, even if we couldn't afford some of the luxuries I saw other families enjoying. I would get home from school around 4 o'clock, help Nora and Felix with their homework, and start preparing dinner. Bradley usually arrived home between 6 and 7, depending on his caseload. We would eat dinner together as a family, talking about our days and the kids' activities. Evenings were spent helping with homework, driving kids to soccer practice or violin lessons, and enjoying the quiet moments of family life. Weekends were for household chores, children's sports games, and occasional family activities that didn't cost much money. We would go hiking in the desert, visit free museums on community days, or have picnics at local parks. I told myself that these simple activities were actually better for our children than expensive entertainment, teaching them to appreciate nature and family time rather than material possessions. The children seemed happy and well-adjusted, and that was the most important thing to me. Nora excelled in school and had good friends who came over for study sessions and sleepovers. Felix was thriving in soccer and had developed genuine friendships with his teammates. Both kids contributed to household chores appropriate for their ages and seemed to understand that we needed to be careful with money without feeling deprived or embarrassed about our financial limitations. My sister Celeste was the only person who regularly questioned our financial situation. During our weekly phone calls or monthly lunch dates, she would ask pointed questions about why we never seemed to have money for vacations or home improvements. Celeste made good money as a nurse and couldn't understand why 2 working parents couldn't afford the same lifestyle as other families in our neighborhood. "Tamika, I know teachers don't make much, but Bradley has a good job," she would say. "You guys should be able to afford more than you do. Are you sure he's managing your money well?" I would always defend Bradley, explaining that he was being conservative with our finances and building long-term security rather than spending money on immediate gratification. I told Celeste that Bradley understood investments and retirement planning in ways that I didn't, and that his careful approach would pay off in the future when we needed college money for the kids or when we were ready to retire. Besides, I would add, we're happy. The kids are doing well, we have a nice home, and we're building something solid together. Not everyone needs to live like they're on a reality TV show. Celeste would usually drop the subject, but I could see the concern in her eyes. She loved me and wanted the best for our family, but she also had a natural skepticism about people's motives that I lacked. Where I saw Bradley's financial caution as protection, Celeste saw potential control or deception. Where I saw his expertise as valuable, she wondered why I wasn't more involved in decisions that affected my own financial security. The truth was, I didn't want to be more involved in our finances. Numbers and budgets stressed me out, and I was grateful to have a husband who was willing to handle those responsibilities. I preferred focusing on my teaching, my children, and the daily joys of family life, rather than worrying about investment strategies or insurance policies. Bradley seemed competent and trustworthy, and our bills were getting paid, so I assumed everything was fine. Our social life revolved around school events, neighborhood gatherings, and children's activities. We weren't the family that hosted elaborate parties or took expensive vacations, but we were present and engaged in our community. I volunteered at school fundraisers, chaperoned field trips, and helped coordinate team snacks for Felix's soccer games. Bradley coached Felix's team for 2 seasons and helped with neighborhood barbecues and holiday celebrations. From the outside, we looked like a stable, happy family that had chosen to prioritize time together over material wealth. Our house was clean and comfortable, our children were polite and successful in school, and our marriage appeared strong and supportive. I received compliments from other parents about how well-behaved Nora and Felix were, and other teachers at my school often commented on how lucky I was to have such a reliable, hard-working husband. What I didn't realize was that this picture-perfect life was being funded by borrowed money and sustained by lies that were growing more elaborate every month. While I was teaching my students about honesty, integrity, and taking responsibility for their actions, my own husband was demonstrating the exact opposite values in ways I couldn't see. The foundation of trust that I thought was supporting our marriage was actually hiding a betrayal so comprehensive that it touched every aspect of our financial life. The security I felt was an illusion created by someone who understood exactly how to manipulate my trust and my desire to focus on the positive aspects of our life together. But even the most carefully constructed lies eventually begin to crack under pressure, and the pressure was about to become more than Bradley could handle. The first crack in my perfect world appeared on a Tuesday morning in October when my phone rang at 6:15, just as I was getting ready for school. My mother's voice was shaking as she told me that my father had collapsed at home and was being rushed to the hospital. The paramedics suspected a heart attack, and she needed me to meet her at Phoenix General as soon as possible. I called the school to arrange for a substitute teacher, woke up Nora and Felix to explain that Grandpa was sick, and they would need to stay with their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, until Bradley could pick them up, and raced to the hospital with my heart pounding and my mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. Dad was stable by the time I arrived, but the doctors confirmed that he had suffered a significant heart attack and would need immediate surgery to clear blocked arteries. The procedure itself would be covered by his Medicare and supplemental insurance, but there were additional costs that weren't covered. Specialized tests, a longer hospital stay, and follow-up care that could total around $8,000. My parents had some savings, but not enough to cover these unexpected medical expenses. They had worked hard their entire lives and saved what they could. But like many retirees, they lived on a fixed income that didn't leave much room for financial emergencies. They were embarrassed to ask for help, but my mother was terrified that they might have to skip some of the recommended treatments due to cost. "Don't worry about the money, Mom," I told her, holding her hand in the hospital waiting room. "Bradley and I will help cover whatever insurance doesn't pay. Dad's health is the most important thing right now." I truly believed this would be possible. We had been married for 15 years, and Bradley had always assured me that we were building a solid financial foundation with emergency savings for exactly this type of situation. I had never needed to access our emergency funds before. but I assumed we had at least $10,000 to $15,000 set aside for unexpected expenses. When I called Bradley to explain the situation, his reaction was not what I expected. Instead of immediate concern for my father's health and reassurance about the money, he seemed agitated and defensive. $8,000? Tamika, that's a lot of money. Are you sure insurance won't cover more of it? Have you talked to the hospital about payment plans? Bradley, this is my father we're talking about. He needs the best care possible, and $8,000 isn't going to bankrupt us. Can't we just transfer money from our emergency savings? There was a long pause before Bradley responded. It's not that simple. Our emergency funds aren't completely liquid right now. I have most of our savings in investments that would take time to access without penalty. This explanation confused me. I had always assumed that emergency savings meant money we could access immediately in case of emergencies, not investments that would be difficult to liquidate quickly. But I was stressed about my father's condition and didn't want to argue about financial details while he was in surgery. Okay, but can you figure something out? Maybe we can take a cash advance on one of our credit cards temporarily until you can move money around. Tamika, you don't understand how our finances work. Just focus on your dad right now, and we'll figure out the money situation later. His dismissive tone hurt my feelings, but I was too worried about Dad to process it fully. I ended up calling my sister Celeste, who immediately offered to lend us the money without any questions or conditions. She drove to the hospital with a check that afternoon, telling me not to worry about paying her back quickly and to focus on Dad's recovery. The fact that I had to borrow money from my sister to help my own parents was embarrassing and confusing. Celeste was generous and loving, but she was also single with no children, while Bradley and I had 2 incomes and should have been able to handle an $8,000 emergency without outside help. Tamika, I love you and I'm happy to help, but this is weird, Celeste said as we sat in the hospital cafeteria. You and Bradley both work. Your house payment isn't that high, and you live pretty modestly. Where is all your money going? I didn't have a good answer for her question. I realized that I actually had no idea how much money we had in savings, what our monthly expenses totaled, or what Bradley meant when he talked about investments and financial planning. I had been so focused on trusting his expertise that I had never demanded actual details about our financial situation. Over the next few weeks, as Dad recovered and we worked out a payment plan for his medical expenses, I started paying closer attention to our household finances. What I discovered made me increasingly uncomfortable and suspicious. First, I noticed that Bradley was receiving phone calls at strange times that he would take in private. When his phone rang during dinner or family time, he would step outside or go into our bedroom, speaking in hushed tones for 10 or 15 minutes before returning without explanation. When I asked about these calls, he would say they were work-related or that a client needed urgent assistance. Second, I realized that our mail was being delivered while I was at work, and Bradley was getting home before me most days. I started noticing that he would sometimes have a stack of opened mail on the kitchen counter with certain pieces missing. When I asked about credit card statements or bank notices, he would say he had already reviewed them and filed them away, or that they were electronic statements he accessed online. Third, I discovered that Bradley had been lying about his work schedule. During a parent-teacher conference at Nora's school, I mentioned to another parent that Bradley had been working late frequently and couldn't attend many evening events. This parent's husband worked for the same insurance company, and he looked confused. Really? Because Mike said their office has been pretty slow lately, and most of the adjusters have been getting off early to catch up on paperwork at home. This comment stuck with me, and I decided to call Bradley's office one day when he said he would be working late. His coworker told me that Bradley had left at 3:30 that afternoon for what he said was an off-site meeting that would last the rest of the day. When I confronted Bradley about this discrepancy, he became angry and defensive in a way I had never seen before. "Are you checking up on me now, Tamika?" I don't appreciate being treated like I'm lying to you. My work involves confidential meetings and investigations that I can't always discuss in detail. Sometimes I meet with clients or attorneys at locations away from the office. His anger intimidated me and made me feel guilty for questioning him. But it also didn't explain why he couldn't tell me he was going to an off-site meeting instead of saying he would be working late at the office. The final red flag appeared when I was cleaning out Bradley's truck to surprise him with a detailed car wash. Hidden in the glove compartment, underneath registration papers and insurance cards, I found a second cell phone that I had never seen before. The phone was an older model smartphone with a cracked screen protector. When I pressed the power button, it came to life, showing several unread text messages and missed calls. I knew I shouldn't look through Bradley's private property, but my growing suspicions overcame my respect for his privacy. The text messages were confusing and alarming. There were several exchanges about payments and deadlines, references to amounts of money that seemed significant, and messages from unknown contacts with names like Tony and Rita that contained urgent language about handling the situation and getting caught up. One message thread made my heart race. B, you're 3 weeks behind again. This can't keep happening. Call me tonight or we'll have to discuss other options. I quickly turned off the phone and put it back where I found it, but my hands were shaking and my mind was spinning with possibilities. The messages could have been related to work, but they didn't sound like professional insurance communications. They sounded like someone was in financial trouble and struggling to meet obligations that carried serious consequences. That night, I tried to bring up our financial situation again with Bradley, hoping he would volunteer information that would ease my growing concerns. Honey, I've been thinking about our budget and our savings goals. Would it be possible for us to sit down together and go over our financial situation? I'd like to understand our investments and long-term planning better. Bradley's response was immediate and sharp. Tamika, we've been through this. You don't need to worry about the complicated financial stuff. I handle it because I'm good at it and because it stresses you out. Your job is to focus on the kids and your teaching. My job is to secure our financial future. But Bradley, we've been married for 15 years. And I don't even know how much money we have saved. That's not normal. Most couples discuss their finances together. Most couples don't have one partner who understands finance and investments like I do. You don't understand these things, Tamika. Trust me, I'm protecting our family's future. His condescending tone and refusal to include me in decisions about my own financial security felt wrong and controlling. I had trusted his expertise for years, but trust shouldn't require complete ignorance about my own family's money. I realized that night that I had allowed Bradley to create a financial dictatorship in our marriage, where he made all the decisions and I was expected to remain grateful and uninformed. But my growing suspicions and the mysterious phone calls, hidden mail, and secret cell phone suggested that Bradley's financial expertise might not be protecting our family's future at all. Something was very wrong, and I was finally ready to find out what my husband had been hiding from me. The weekend that changed everything started on a Friday morning when Bradley announced he would be attending a mandatory insurance conference in Tucson from Saturday morning through Sunday evening. He seemed nervous about the trip, explaining that it was a last-minute requirement from his company and that he would need to leave early Saturday and wouldn't be back until late Sunday night. "It's one of those continuing education things," he said, avoiding eye contact while packing his overnight bag. "The company is paying for everything, but they expect us to attend every session and participate in team-building exercises. I probably won't be able to call much because the schedule is pretty packed." Something about his explanation felt rehearsed and false. In 15 years of marriage, Bradley had attended several work conferences, and he had never been nervous about them before. He usually looked forward to the break from routine and the opportunity to network with colleagues from other offices. This time, he seemed anxious and eager to avoid discussing details about the conference agenda or which coworkers would be attending. After Bradley left Saturday morning, I spent several hours doing household chores and thinking about my growing suspicions. The hidden cell phone had been weighing on my mind for weeks, and I finally decided that I needed to investigate further. If Bradley was hiding something that could affect our family's financial security, I had a right to know what it was. I retrieved the phone from its hiding place in the truck and brought it inside. My hands were shaking as I turned it on and began exploring its contents more thoroughly than I had during my initial discovery. What I found was far worse than I had imagined. The text message history revealed ongoing conversations about gambling debts, late payments, and threats of escalating consequences. One thread with someone named Tony contained messages dating back several months, discussing amounts of money that made my stomach drop. There were references to weekly payments, interest charges, and final warnings that painted a picture of someone in serious financial trouble. Another conversation thread with Rita contained messages about covering the spread and double or nothing bets that had apparently gone wrong repeatedly. The most recent messages in this thread were increasingly desperate, with Bradley begging for one more chance and promising that big payout that would get everything back to even. But the most shocking discovery was a series of text messages that appeared to be bank balance notifications and credit card alerts. According to these automated messages, multiple accounts associated with Bradley's name were either overdrawn or maxed out. I saw notifications about declined transactions, over-limit fees, and minimum payment due warnings that suggested our financial situation was much worse than I had ever imagined. My heart was pounding as I realized that the text messages were only part of the story. I decided to call our bank's customer service line using Bradley's Social Security number and our account information to check our actual savings balance. The customer service representative was helpful and professional as she verified my identity and access to the account. When I asked for our current savings account balance, her response hit me like a physical blow. "Mrs. Williams, your savings account currently has a balance of $347.15. I asked her to repeat the information, certain that she had made a mistake or accessed the wrong account. $347 was not our emergency fund. It was barely enough to cover a week of groceries. Ma'am, I'm showing only one savings account associated with your Social Security numbers, and the current balance is $347.15. The last deposit was for $100 on September 15th, and there have been several small withdrawals since then." I hung up the phone in shock and immediately called my sister Celeste. My voice was shaking as I explained what I had discovered, and she insisted on coming over immediately to help me investigate further. "Tamika, this is serious," Celeste said as she sat at my kitchen table an hour later, looking through the text messages on Bradley's hidden phone. "These aren't work-related communications. This looks like someone with a serious gambling problem who has been borrowing money from dangerous people." Together, we decided to search more thoroughly through Bradley's personal belongings and the financial documents he kept in his home office. What we discovered over the next several hours was a systematic pattern of financial deception that had been going on for years. Hidden in a file folder marked tax documents, we found credit card statements that I had never seen before. Bradley had opened multiple credit cards in his name alone, and every single one was maxed out. The total debt across these hidden cards was over $73,000, with minimum monthly payments that exceeded my entire teaching salary. We also found evidence that Bradley had been taking cash advances against our home equity line of credit without my knowledge. Our house, which I thought was nearly paid off, was now carrying a second mortgage that put our total debt close to the original purchase price. The equity we had built over 15 years of payments had been borrowed against and apparently lost to gambling. Celeste helped me access Bradley's laptop computer, where we found browser history that revealed the extent of his online gambling activities. He had accounts with multiple sports betting websites, online poker platforms, and virtual casino games. The account summaries we could access showed consistent losses over a period of several years, with occasional small wins that encouraged increasingly larger bets. The most devastating discovery was a spreadsheet hidden in a folder labeled Work Projects that appeared to be Bradley's attempt to track his gambling losses and plan for recovery. The spreadsheet showed that over the past 3 years, he had lost over $90,000 through various forms of gambling. His plan for getting even involved increasingly desperate betting strategies and borrowing more money to fund larger bets that he believed would recover his previous losses. "Tamika, this is bad," Celeste said as we stared at the computer screen. "He's been living in a fantasy world where he thinks he can gamble his way out of debt. People who think like this don't stop until they lose everything." I felt sick to my stomach as I realized that Bradley hadn't been protecting our family's financial future. He had been systematically destroying it while lying to me about our security and stability. The man I had trusted with our children's college funds and our retirement savings had been gambling away everything we had worked to build together. But as devastating as these discoveries were, I had a feeling that I still hadn't uncovered the complete truth. The hidden phone contained contact information for people whose names I didn't recognize, and some of the text message conversations referenced payments and obligations that didn't seem to be related to gambling debts. I decided that I needed to call some of the numbers in the phone to understand the full scope of Bradley's deceptions. I was terrified about what I might learn, but I knew that I couldn't protect my children's future without understanding exactly what we were facing. The first number I called went to voicemail for someone named Tony, whose message was brief and businesslike. "You know what this is about. Leave a message with your payment plan, or don't bother calling back." The second number I tried was answered by a woman with a pleasant voice who said, "Hi, honey, I was just thinking about you." I realized immediately that this woman thought she was talking to Bradley, and my heart started racing as I understood that I was about to uncover something even worse than gambling debts and financial deception. This isn't Bradley," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "This is his wife, Tamika." There was a long silence before the woman responded, and when she did, her voice was confused and concerned. "His wife? But Bradley told me he was divorced. We've been together for 3 years now. Who is this really?" The room started spinning as I realized that Bradley's hidden phone wasn't just for gambling communications. It was for maintaining a secret relationship with another woman who believed she was involved with a divorced man who was available and committed to her. My marriage, my family's financial security, and my entire understanding of my life had just been revealed as an elaborate lie that had been carefully maintained for years. But instead of falling apart, I felt a strange clarity and determination settling over me. I was going to find out everything, and then I was going to take control of my family's future in a way that Bradley would never be able to manipulate or destroy again. His wife? But Bradley told me he was divorced. We've been together for 3 years now. Who is this really? The woman's voice was genuinely confused and concerned, not angry or defensive. She sounded like someone who believed she was in a legitimate relationship with an available man, and I realized that she was as much a victim of Bradley's lies as I was. "My name is Tamika Williams. and I've been married to Bradley Williams for 15 years. We have 2 children together, and we live in Phoenix. I found this phone hidden in his truck, and your number was the most frequently called contact." There was a long pause, and when the woman spoke again, her voice was shaking. Oh my God, this can't be happening. My name is Delilah Crane, and Bradley has been my boyfriend for 3 years. He told me he got divorced when his wife moved to California with their kids. He said it was amicable and that he was ready to start a new life. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience as Delilah continued talking, describing a relationship with my husband that was far more extensive and serious than I could have imagined. While I was at home believing we were building a life together, Bradley had been creating an entirely separate life with another woman. "Delilah, I need you to tell me everything," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "I know this is shocking for both of us, but I need to understand what's been happening." Celeste was sitting next to me at the kitchen table, her eyes wide with disbelief as she listened to my side of the conversation. She handed me a pen and paper so I could take notes, and I started recording the call on her cell phone to make sure I had evidence of everything Delilah was about to tell me. "Bradley and I met at a casino in Scottsdale 3 years ago," Delilah began, her voice getting stronger as she processed the situation. "He was there for what he said was a business meeting, and we started talking at the bar. He told me he was recently divorced and was learning to enjoy life again. He was charming and funny, and he seemed so lonely and genuine." My stomach twisted as I realized that Bradley's business meetings and late work nights had been cover stories for an affair that had been going on for 3 years. While I was home helping our children with homework and managing our household, he was at casinos meeting other women and lying about his entire life situation. "We started seeing each other regularly after that first night," Delilah continued. "Bradley would come to my apartment several times a week, always in the evenings or on weekends. He said his work schedule was irregular because of insurance investigations and that he had to travel sometimes for complex cases." "Delilah, I need to ask you some specific questions, and I know they're going to be uncomfortable. Has Bradley been giving you money or paying for things in your relationship?" There was another pause before Delilah answered, and I could hear the realization dawning in her voice. "He pays for my apartment. The lease is in my name, but he gives me cash for the rent every month. He says it's because he wants to take care of me and because his divorce settlement left him with extra money that he prefers to spend on our relationship rather than keeping it in accounts his ex-wife might be able to access." My hands were shaking as I wrote down this information. The rent money Bradley was giving Delilah was coming from our family's finances, money that should have been going toward our children's college funds or our emergency savings. "He also bought me a car last year," Delilah continued, her voice getting smaller as she began to understand the implications of what she was telling me. "It's a used Honda, but it was the first reliable car I've ever owned. He said he wanted me to be safe and that he could afford it because of a bonus he got at work." I knew that Bradley hadn't received any bonuses at work. He was funding his secret life by stealing from our family's future and going deeper into debt with credit cards and loans that I was just discovering. "Delilah, what did Bradley tell you about his ex-wife and children?" "He said you were bitter about the divorce and had moved to California to keep the kids away from him. He claimed you were demanding high alimony payments and that he was struggling to rebuild his life financially because of what you were taking from him. He made you sound vindictive and greedy." The cruelty of Bradley's lies was breathtaking. Not only had he been stealing our money to fund his affair, but he had also been portraying me as the villain in a fictional divorce story to gain sympathy and justify his financial support of another woman. "He talks about you and the kids sometimes," Delilah said quietly. "He says he misses them and wishes things could have been different. He shows me pictures on his phone sometimes, a girl and a boy who look like they could be in middle school and elementary school. "Those are our children, Nora and Felix," I said, my voice breaking for the first time during the conversation. "They're 12 and 9, and they have no idea their father has been lying to everyone about everything. Oh God, they're real. The kids are real, and you're real, and I've been part of destroying a family without knowing it." Delilah was crying now, and I could hear the genuine remorse and horror in her voice. "Delilah, you didn't know. You're a victim here too. But I need you to tell me more so I can protect my children and figure out what to do next." Over the next hour, Delilah provided me with details about Bradley's secret life that painted a picture of systematic deception that was even worse than I had imagined. She told me about expensive dinners at restaurants I had never heard of, weekend trips to Las Vegas and San Diego that he had paid for with money stolen from our family, and elaborate lies about his work schedule that allowed him to maintain relationships with both of us simultaneously. "Just last weekend, he took me to Sedona for what he called a romantic getaway," Delilah said. "He said his company had given him comp time for working so many extra hours lately, and that he wanted to celebrate a big case he had just settled. Last weekend was when Bradley had told me he was attending the insurance conference in Tucson. He hadn't been in continuing education seminars or team-building exercises. He had been on a romantic vacation with his girlfriend, paid for with money that should have been securing our children's future." "Delilah, I know this is a lot to ask, but would you be willing to help me document Bradley's lies? I'm going to need evidence when I confront him and when I file for divorce." "Yes, absolutely. I have text messages, receipts, and photos from our relationship. I also have documentation of all the money he's given me over the years. I thought I was in love with a divorced man who was generous and caring, but now I understand that he was stealing from his wife and children to impress me." "There's something else I need to tell you," Delilah continued. "Bradley has been stressed about money lately. He told me that his ex-wife was demanding more alimony and that his company was cutting back on overtime opportunities. He asked me if I could start contributing more to our relationship expenses because he was having trouble keeping up with all his obligations." This revelation explained some of the recent tension I had noticed in Bradley's behavior. His gambling debts, credit card payments, affair expenses, and household obligations had apparently reached a point where even his systematic stealing couldn't keep up with his financial commitments. "He also mentioned that he might need to borrow some money from me soon," Delilah added. "He said it would just be temporary until he could access some investments that were tied up in complicated financial instruments." I realized that Bradley's lies were becoming increasingly desperate and unsustainable. He was now trying to get money from his girlfriend to help fund the elaborate deception that was keeping his double life functional. "Delilah, I think Bradley is going to be back home tomorrow night, and I'm going to confront him with everything I've discovered. Would you be willing to call him while I'm present so I can see how he reacts to being caught?" "Yes, I'll do whatever you need me to do. I feel sick about what I've been part of, even though I didn't know the truth. Those poor kids. How could he steal from his own children?" After I hung up with Delilah, I sat in my kitchen with Celeste, staring at pages of notes that documented the complete destruction of everything I had believed about my marriage and my husband's character. Bradley wasn't just a man with a gambling problem who had made some bad financial decisions. He was someone who had been living a double life for years, funding an affair by stealing from his own children's future while portraying himself as a victim of a vindictive ex-wife. "Tamika, you can't confront him alone," Celeste said. "This man has been lying to you about everything for years. We have no idea how he'll react when he realizes you've discovered his secrets." She was right. I needed to be strategic about how I handled this confrontation, both for my own safety and to protect my children from the chaos that was about to destroy their family as they knew it. But first, I had one more day to prepare, and I was going to use that time to make sure Bradley would never be able to hurt my family again. I didn't sleep at all Saturday night. Instead, I spent the entire night with Celeste, methodically documenting every piece of evidence we had discovered and developing a plan for confronting Bradley when he returned from his fake conference. By Sunday morning, I had transformed from a trusting wife into a strategic opponent who understood exactly what she was fighting for. The first thing I did was contact a divorce attorney. Celeste helped me find someone who specialized in cases involving financial deception and hidden assets. Even though it was Sunday, the attorney agreed to meet with me at her office to review the evidence I had gathered and advise me on protecting my children's interests. Mrs. Williams, this is one of the most comprehensive cases of financial deception I've seen in 20 years of practice, the attorney said as she reviewed my documentation. Your husband has essentially been running a criminal enterprise designed to steal from his own family while maintaining plausible deniability. She helped me file emergency paperwork to freeze our joint accounts and prevent Bradley from accessing what little money remained in our savings. She also advised me to document the current state of our home and possessions in case Bradley tried to hide or sell valuable items once he realized his deception had been discovered. Most importantly, she said, you need to understand that Bradley's reaction to being confronted may be unpredictable. People who have been living elaborate lies for years sometimes become desperate or even dangerous when their world starts falling apart. Sunday afternoon, I called my principal to explain that I would need personal leave for the next few days due to a family emergency. I arranged for Nora and Felix to stay with Celeste Sunday night, telling them that Daddy and I needed to have some serious adult conversations about family business and that they would be more comfortable at their aunt's house. Is Daddy in trouble? Nora asked, with the perceptive concern of a 12-year-old who senses that something significant is happening. Daddy has made some choices that affect our family, and we need to discuss how to move forward, I told her honestly. Whatever happens, you and Felix are loved and safe, and that will never change. I spent Sunday evening removing Bradley's belongings from our bedroom and moving them to the garage. I changed the locks on our house and programmed our security system with a new code. I printed copies of all the evidence I had gathered and stored them in multiple locations, including Celeste's house and my attorney's office. Most importantly, I prepared myself emotionally for the confrontation that would end my marriage and begin a new chapter of my life as a single mother, protecting her children from a father who had proven he couldn't be trusted with their welfare. Bradley returned home Sunday night around 9 o'clock, using his key to discover that it no longer worked in our front door. When he knocked, I opened the door but didn't invite him inside. Tomika, what's going on? Why doesn't my key work? We need to talk, Bradley. Have a seat on the porch. I had decided to confront him outside our home so that our children's living space wouldn't be contaminated by the ugliness of what was about to happen. I wanted our house to remain a place of safety and comfort for Nora and Felix, not a location where they would remember their father's lies being exposed. I found your phone, Bradley, the one you keep hidden in your truck. Bradley's face went completely white, and I watched 15 years of lies crumble in real time as he realized that his carefully constructed double life was over. Tomika, I can explain. It's not what you think. I called Delilah yesterday. We had a long conversation about your 3-year relationship, the apartment you pay for, the car you bought her, and the weekend trips you've been taking together. She thought you were divorced, and that I was your vindictive ex-wife living in California. Bradley's mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. He looked like a man who had been caught in such a comprehensive lie that there was no possible explanation that could repair the damage. I also know about the gambling, Bradley. I found the credit card statements, the home equity loans, and your spreadsheet tracking $90,000 in losses. I know that our savings account has $347 instead of the emergency fund you've been telling me about for years." "I can fix this," Bradley said desperately. "I know I made mistakes, but I can fix everything. The gambling was a problem, but I've been working on getting help. The thing with Delilah was stupid, but it doesn't mean anything. You and the kids are my real family. Bradley, you have been systematically stealing from our children's future for years while lying to my face about our financial security. You have been having an affair for 3 years while pretending to be a loving husband and father. There is no fixing this." I handed him a folder containing divorce papers that my attorney had prepared, along with copies of all the evidence I had gathered. "You have stolen over $90,000 from this family through gambling. You have racked up $73,000 in credit card debt that I knew nothing about. You have been using our home equity to fund your affair and your gambling addiction. You have put our children's college funds and our family's financial future at risk to support your lies." Bradley started crying, but his tears felt manipulative rather than genuine. Even in this moment of complete exposure, he seemed to be calculating how to minimize the consequences of his actions rather than taking responsibility for the harm he had caused. "The children don't know any of this yet," I continued, "but they will need to understand why their father is no longer living in our house and why our financial situation has changed. You are going to help me explain this to them in a way that doesn't destroy their ability to trust people in the future. Tamika, please, we can work this out. I'll get counseling. I'll stop gambling. I'll end things with Delilah. Our marriage is worth fighting for." "Our marriage ended the day you decided that your gambling addiction and your affair were more important than your children's security and your wife's trust. I'm not interested in working anything out except the terms of our divorce and your ongoing responsibility to Nora and Felix." Over the next several hours, with Celeste present as a witness, Bradley was forced to admit the full scope of his deception. He confirmed that he had been gambling for over 4 years, that his relationship with Delilah had been ongoing for 3 years, and that he had been systematically hiding financial information from me throughout our marriage. The most shocking revelation was that Bradley had been planning to declare bankruptcy within the next few months, which would have destroyed our credit and potentially cost us our house. He had been hoping that a few big gambling wins would allow him to pay off his debts before I discovered the extent of our financial problems. "I was trying to protect you from worrying about money," he said lamely. "I thought I could fix everything before you ever had to know how bad things had gotten. You weren't protecting me, Bradley. You were protecting yourself from the consequences of your choices. Every lie you told me was designed to preserve your ability to continue gambling and cheating while maintaining the appearance of being a responsible husband and father." 6 months later, our divorce was finalized. Bradley was required to pay child support based on his actual income, and the court held him responsible for the debt he had accumulated through gambling and his affair. I was able to keep our house because it had been purchased primarily with money I had inherited from my grandmother, and Bradley's name was removed from the deed. The children struggled with the divorce, but they adapted better than I had expected. I was honest with them about their father's gambling problem and his difficulties with honesty, but I was careful not to poison their relationship with him completely. They deserved the opportunity to maintain a connection with their father, even though that relationship would need to be carefully supervised. Delilah contacted me several months after our initial phone call to let me know that she had discovered Bradley was involved with at least 2 other women during the time they were together. His pattern of deception was apparently much more extensive than either of us had realized, and she wanted to make sure I knew that his lies went beyond anything we had discussed. I used this experience to create a financial literacy workshop for women at my school and in our community. I teach other women how to recognize the warning signs of financial deception and how to protect themselves from partners who use money as a tool of control and manipulation. The most important lesson I learned was that financial transparency isn't just about money. It's about respect, trust, and partnership. When someone excludes you from decisions that affect your security and your children's future, they are telling you that they don't consider you an equal partner in your own life. I also learned that my instincts were stronger than I had given them credit for. The signs of Bradley's deception had been there for years, but I had been trained to ignore my suspicions in favor of maintaining peace and trusting someone who claimed to have my best interests at heart. Today, Nora is thriving in high school and has a clear plan for funding her college education through scholarships, part-time work, and carefully managed savings. Felix continues to excel in soccer and has developed a healthy skepticism about financial promises that seem too good to be true. I am financially independent, debt-free, and confident in my ability to make decisions that protect my family's future. I still believe in marriage and partnership, but I will never again allow someone else to control my financial destiny while claiming it's for my own protection. That one phone call didn't just end Bradley's secret. It ended my willingness to let anyone else's lies define my reality. Sometimes the most devastating betrayal leads to the most empowering discoveries about your own strength and capability. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the beginning of the best version of yourself.